Hello, my name is Savannah Ball, and I am a third-year psychology student at the Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. I will be discussing a few of the chapters from the book Barracoon, written by Zora Neale Hurston. This book is written in an interview between Alual Kusula, the last known slave survivor from the slave ship Barracoon, and Hurston. I'm going to be discussing the first 4 chapters of the book. I found these chapters very interesting because they focused on life outside of slavery. The first 4 chapters actually introduces you to Alual Kusula, and it gives a bit of his background in the chapters. These chapters are considered my personal favorites as it discusses the life and tradition Kusula lived before being captured. Kusula discusses in detail of some of the common traditions and rituals he and his village people live by. The main difference I noticed between this book and other books focusing on a similar topic is that Kusula recounts his memories. He focuses mainly on the positives of his life, which are the life that he had before and a little bit after slavery. While he does touch on his time in slavery, it is not the main focus point of the interview. Throughout my years of schooling, I've never understood the lives of African people before slavery. Most books I've read generally start with a brief intro of a calm life before capture for Africans, and then slavery abruptly happens, and the story only focuses on the conditions of slavery, nothing really outside of that. With these first chapters that also continue on past chapter 4, the reader gets to experience the way of life in West Africa through Kusula's memories as he recalls them. For example, we see how tight-knit his tribe was as they carry out their justice as a community. Kusula discusses the carry out of justice as like a town event. The king would urge people to come to view any punishments that needed to be carried out as a teaching lesson for anyone else who decided to go against the common laws. The reader also sees the hierarchy of power within the tribe, starting with the king and going down to chiefs and so on. The king was viewed as most powerful and oversaw major decisions for the village people. Many people respected the king, and his presence was always known by the sounding of drums. The beginning of the book provides the reader with a substantial amount of knowledge about the principles and the way of life Kusula lived by his tribe before slavery. The book Barracoon was written by Zora Neale Hurston, who was inspired to write this story by her upbringing and the time period she was born in. Hurston was born the 5th of 8 children to a mother who was a teacher and a father who was a preacher and sharecropper in 1891. Slavery had only been over for about 26 years before she was born, so discrimination and segregation were very evident in this time period, along with the Jim Crow era in full swing. All 4 of Hurston's grandparents were actually born into slavery, so Hurston's parents were the first generation of her family to be born free. Hurston was born in Natasuga, Alabama, but later moved to Edenville, Florida when she was only 3 years old. This town was the first all-black town in the United States at the time. Here, Hurston felt free and proud to call this place home. She refers to it as a place where African Americans could live independent of a white society, which in turn shaped her writings tremendously, as you can see by the book Barracoon. Barracoon's content ties to the themes in American history covered in our textbook because it captures the life for many Africans before, during, and after the Atlantic slave trade. The chapters I specifically selected that relates to the themes found in this book was in chapter 8, which is called West Africa, Society and Culture. And it also ties into certain themes found in the chapters about the Harlem Renaissance, which happens to be the time that this book was actually written in, the Harlem Renaissance time period. Barracoon's storyline is centered around Alual Kusula, also known as Cujo Lewis. He was one of the last survivors of the Clotilda, which was the last vessel to carry Africans into slavery. The chapters I've selected tells of his life before slavery up until he was 19. Kusula recalls his native rites of passage, marriage customs, and community-based justice. When he was 19, he was kidnapped and sold to European slave owners. Throughout the rest of the story, Kasula recounts the cruelty he witnessed as he had seen his loved ones decapitated for money while he was sold off. As Kasula tells his story, I noticed that he focuses and describes in great detail of his life before and after slavery while being at Africatown, which is a place for emancipated people that was founded by him, emancipated people. This also allows the reader to see how passionate Kasula is about his culture and where he comes from, as he promises to never forget what he has gone through. To encourage his storytelling, Hurston often brought him gifts each time she went to visit him for an interview, which in turn gained his trust and corroborates his accounts with historical records. This book isn't written to verify or confirm accuracy, but to serve as a testament to his incredible memory. The strength of the story was that Hurston kept Kasula's original dialect, which gives him space to be the subject, the narrator, and the protagonist alike. Another strength is that Kasula does not shy away from leaving out details about his life before slavery. This helps the reader get a better understanding of him as a person, and he gives us a more personal account of the culture he had to leave behind, as did many Africans did before being sold. This book's material is significant to a student's learning experience, as it can serve as a primary source when learning about the slave trade. Any student also wishing to learn about the previous life that Africans had to leave behind before being captured into slavery would find this read very useful as well. I find that many students have knowledge on slavery itself, but not many have knowledge on the way of life that Africans lived before slavery had happened. So basically, schools teach about slavery, like they touch on it, but they really don't go into depth about the life that they had before in Africa. Like, no, I never really had a personal experience where that was explained. We more so just jumped right into slavery. So this book would be a good read for those types of students. And that concludes my video.